You do not need an expensive high-end PC to capture gameplay or make gaming content in professional-looking resolutions and frame rates. I stream and make gaming content from my console using my bog standard, very typical non-gaming laptop. And in this video, I'm going to show you everything you need to know to do exactly the same thing. Okay, so before we go any further, I should probably at least mention the fact that the laptop that I am personally using is a Mac. So you know it's not a gaming laptop. But don't worry, nothing I'm going to be talking about requires a Mac. It doesn't matter what kind of setup you have. Everything I'll be showing here today is 100% platform agnostic. So as with anything else really, before we start talking about solutions, we need to define our problem, right? So what is the problem we're trying to solve? Well, in this video, we are primarily going to be focusing on how to capture gameplay footage from your console and get that gameplay footage into whatever setup you're going to be using for the rest of your streaming and or content creation solution. And depending on exactly what it is you're trying to do with all that footage, the rest of your content creation solution is probably going to involve things like cameras, microphones, some sort of software to tie it all together. And we are not going to be going into detail about any of those additional aspects. In this video, we're going to be focusing on the gameplay capture aspect of the equation. So with all of that out of the way, when it comes to capturing gameplay from our consoles, what are the things we need to consider? Well, first and foremost is obviously going to be playing those games, right? We need to be able to capture our gameplay footage in one place while we continue to play the game in some other place. You probably have your console connected to your TV, and that's where you play, and you're going to be capturing your footage probably on your computer or tablet or whatever it is you're going to be using. And we need to be able to do both of those things at the same time, which means that things like these cheap, simple USB capture cards and even more powerful, dedicated hardware encoders are simply not going to work for us. These devices are simple and effective. They're great for what they do, but unfortunately, they're solving a completely different problem from the one that we're trying to solve today. So instead, we're going to need a device that's not only going to capture our signal, but is also going to allow for something called HDMI pass-through, sometimes also referred to as loop out, which brings us to cards like this one. And look, at this point, if you've made it this far into the video, then I feel like there's a pretty good chance that you are probably already familiar with this card. At the very least, you have probably already seen it at some point. And that's because there are a lot of people on the internet right now who are recommending this particular card or one of its many variants. It comes with a lot of different names stamped on it, but there are a lot of people recommending this particular card as a really good, really cheap starter solution for pretty much anybody looking to get into streaming and or content creation using their consoles. And at a glance, it does seem like a pretty good option. It's cheap and readily available. It's selling on Amazon right now for $24.99 with free next day shipping to Prime members. It has the HDMI pass-through that we already talked about. It can accept a 4K signal, and it can stream/record at 1080p 60 frames per second. And honestly, just getting down to brass tacks here, 1080p 60 is really all that you need for either video creation or Twitch streaming. Most of the videos that you see on YouTube are gonna be 1080p. Unless you're doing stuff like comparing graphics cards and showing side-by-side, frame-by-frame differences, very few people are making actual 4K videos for YouTube. And when it comes to Twitch, the highest resolution that they will even allow you to stream anyway is 1080p. So with all of that said, a card like this one at $24.99 starting to sound a little bit like a no-brainer, right? Well, wait a minute, let's just pump those brakes for a second and take a closer look at this thing. Because there are two major reasons why I would not recommend this card for most people. Now, there is a small subset of people for whom I think this card would probably be the perfect solution. And we'll talk more about that in just a couple minutes. But first, let's talk about why I think this particular card is probably not going to work and is going to be a big disappointment really for a lot of people looking to create content using their consoles. All right, so let's take a closer look at this thing and see what it has to say about that HDMI pass-through, because that is super important. And if we scroll down right in the first line of the description, we can see that this capture card supports 4K 60 frames per second HDMI input and 4K 30 frames per second pass-through. Here's the thing, right? If you're gaming on a current generation console, whether it be an Xbox like me, a PlayStation 5, or I think even a Switch 2 for that matter, regardless of the console, if it's current gen, then right now you are already gaming at resolutions and speeds up to 4K 120 frames per second. And this thing is putting out 30 frames per second. We are talking about a massive hit to performance here. I mean, this isn't something that you're gonna get used to or just deal with. No, this is game-changing, game-breaking input lag. Especially if you play any kind of fast-paced competitive game like a shooter, for example. I mean, you can just forget about it. Like if you have ever played Warzone at 120 frames per second and then gone back and tried to play Warzone at 60 frames per second without changing anything else. If you've never done this, try it. You will immediately see that even the simplest thing like movement just becomes incredibly sluggish, unresponsive, and quite frankly difficult. Like turning a corner becomes harder than it needs to be because everything happening on the screen is happening just a few milliseconds behind when your brain is expecting it to. And just absolutely forget about aiming. I mean, aiming just turns into a game of whack-a-mole as you chase your crosshair back and forth across the screen as your brain's trying to figure out why everything happening in front of you is happening behind when it's expecting it to. So yeah, cutting that down to 30 frames per second, I mean, honestly, I think that this is just an absolutely unusable, untenable experience for anybody gaming on a current generation console. Now, all that said, a few minutes ago, I did mention that there is a specific group of people for whom I think this would be a good option. So who are those people? Well, if you're going to be gaming and streaming or recording from something like an original generation Switch, or I think even a Switch OLED, if you're doing stuff like playing Pokemon or maybe streaming classic games from the Nintendo Game Store, if you're doing that sort of thing where you don't really need that high performance, then I think a card like this would probably be just about perfect for you. So if you fit into that category, if that's what you're going to be doing, then congratulations, you just found your card. It's 25 bucks. You might as well go ahead and order it, get connected, start gaming, and start streaming. And with all of that out of the way, we've covered all the different things we can't use, talked about the reasons why we don't really want to use those things. So what can we use? If we are looking to game, stream, and record high performance, fast paced, competitive, current generation games, what's the solution for us? Enter the Elgato 4K-X. This thing is an HDMI 2.1, USB 3.2 Gen 2, ultra high speed HDMI capture and pass-through device. And quite frankly, this thing is kind of amazing. It does so much. But this video is in no way going to be like a review or full breakdown of all of this thing's different features, because like I said, it does a ton. Instead, I just want to talk about why I have ultimately settled on this device through all of my different experimentation and research, because like you saw, I have quite a few different devices and I've tried them all. And ultimately I have settled on this, and I want to talk about why. So why this card? Why the Elgato 4K-X? And really, I think it comes down to the fact that this card is designed from its foundation for people who want to play, stream, and record high-speed competitive games from their console. So every feature on this card is designed to meet the needs of that particular person or use case. So what do I mean by that? Well, first and foremost, the HDMI capture and pass-through. This card is capable of both capturing and passing through an HDMI 2.1 signal with HDR10 at 4K resolution, 144 Hertz. And it does all this with what they call absolutely zero latency. Now, I haven't thoroughly tested that, but I will tell you that it is incredibly good playing on this thing. Like, I don't notice anything. In addition to that, it connects to your computer over USB. So it basically works with any computer. It doesn't really matter. Like, you can literally connect this thing to an iPad. Now, the only caveat to that is depending on the speed of your USB port, some resolutions and features might not be available. So to get the full use, or all of the features out of this card, you do need a 10 gigabits per second USB 3.2 Gen 2 port. If your USB port is slower than that, then you are going to be restricted, just depending on the speed of your port, to some subset of those resolutions. It really just comes down to how fast your USB port is, because this thing's going to be pushing out data at 10 gigabits per second. So if your computer can't take that data in, then it can't take that data in. So this thing will just scale down to whatever your computer or device is capable of handling. And in addition to that, it also has audio features that are specifically designed for the console gamer. So there's a cable that you can buy online. I think it's basically like a 3.5 millimeter splitter, and it allows you to connect both your game headset and chat through the Elgato. So you can not only record the sound from your game, but using this device, you can also record all of your in-game comms if you wanted to, which I think is just a really cool feature. Like I said, it's a very console-centric feature. It's just one of those things you can tell that they're specifically thinking about console gamers when they're designing and building out these features. And to top it all off, it actually comes with all of the cables you need. So it comes in the box with actually a certified HDMI 2.1 ultra high-speed video cable, and it also comes with a USB-C USB 3.2 Gen 2 data cable. And both cables they're really nice braided cables, which honestly these days is kind of nice to see not only cables, but nice cables, the ones you actually need, coming in the box. So yeah, I think that actually kind of wraps it up. In retrospect, I think that might have been just a really long-winded way of saying, if you want to play, stream, and record from your console, get the Elgato 4K-X. This thing's awesome. Also, if you want to stop by and visit me on Twitch, that would be absolutely awesome. I'm Grip It by the Husk on Twitch. I'm streaming all the time, so definitely stop by, say hello. That would be rad. Anyway, that's all I've got for now. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one real soon.